Chris, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation around
Pleasure.
online and church and what all this means for the future. Just introduce yourselves to the folks who are going to be watching this.
So I'm Chris Green. I'm vicar of St James Church in Muswell Hill, which is North London, one of the highest points in North London.
Great. And I've known you for a good number of years and have been always very grateful for the books that you've written over the years, and in particular grateful for the one you've just written in the last few months. Church is online off limits, available on Kindle for those who want to pick it up. And it led me to a whole range of questions, and I'd love to just explore some of them with you. The first is really about, folks are talking about a hybrid future for the church. What on earth are they meaning by that phrase, do you think?
I think it's always worth asking them exactly what they mean by that. I think it's a bit of a code word. For some people, it simply means, well, we're kind of doing what we do now, which is we're able to meet and we're filming it and putting it on YouTube or something like that. That's the least that it needs. Or maybe the prayer meeting happens on Zoom, but church happens in the building on Sunday. This is just sort of a mixed economy. I think for other people, it starts to mean something a lot more ambitious, and how you integrate people sitting at home with people in the building. I think that's very demanding to put that kind of thing together. But it means a spectrum of things, so it's always worth asking what exactly the person has in mind when they say it.
Great, thanks. And in your book, you outline so helpfully a whole sort of backdrop to the online reality that we find ourselves in. And it raises in your book a number of theological issues about being online. Tell us some of those themes that you were exploring in the book, and why those theological issues are important for us.
Yeah, I think looking at the idea of church as gathering, we've kind of taken for granted, obviously, for 2,000 years, that gathering has to be in person. We've suddenly had to face the question, can we gather on screens like this? Does this count? Does meeting together on a screen count? Now, there are various interesting passages in the New Testament where John in his letter talks about being with people in spirit, even though he's not there in person, and Paul talks similarly. And I think it's worth asking the question, what does the Holy Spirit do when we're distant? Can we still meet in some way, shape or form online? That's one big question. There are some physical questions we've got to face, like even if we could sing, singing on screens is just weird. That's a practical thing. The baptism, the Lord's Supper. I think the Lord's Supper is the one that's proved most problematic to think through, because you've got two very different ideas of church driving it. One which is primarily church is gathering of people, and so we can connect through bread and wine shared in our homes. The other is church in a much more heavenly minded way, in which we have to be together to take part in something supernatural, spiritual. And those two sets of arguments have kind of been playing each other out in real time, and we haven't really settled. There's, once again, what's our theology of church? And we're being asked new questions about it.
And in the book, you talk about how the medium itself shapes us. Do you want to say just a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been said for about a century, really, that the tools we use shape us. So our buildings describe the kind of ways we meet, what's possible, what's not possible. We know all that, and that's fairly well-known stuff. What's new, I think, is how these screens shape us. They limit the way we relate to one another, basically from the shoulders up. It's making us ask questions about how our bodies matter when we meet together as Christians. Can we show love and concern through the medium of a screen, when everything is reduced to sight and sound and our other senses are out of the way? So this changes the way we communicate it. It shapes it to some extent. And I think we're only at the beginning of understanding what that does. We do know that our experience online is very different from being in church together. But finding the language to describe that, I think we're still at the early stages of finding it.
Great. And you mentioned a moment ago some of the practical issues. You said, singing on Zoom is just doesn't work because of the way
at all, does it?
No. What are some of the other practical things that we face about being online as church?
I think there's questions of how we actually engage together. We can do it on Zoom, kind of, but we've learned that more than 8 or 9 people in a conversation on Zoom doesn't work. So we use breakout rooms for prayer meetings or whatever. But doing it for a larger group really becomes difficult. The kind of other thing is the kind of informality that you have after church. So I'm not bumping into people. People say to me, how's St. James doing? And the honest answer is, I don't know, because I'm not seeing people. I can see a number on screen, but we're not having those little catch-ups over coffee after church. How did the job interview go? How's your mum? Those kinds of easy little things just aren't happening. We've got a little shorthand here. We talk about washing up the coffee cup conversations. Standing beside somebody, washing up a coffee cup. And you just chat about this and that, but you're connecting. We're not doing that. Everything has to be put in the diary and arranged, and one person speaks at a time, or we can't hear anybody say anything. It's all becoming much more choreographed and formal in a funny kind of way. And that's changing church as well. Those kinds of things unexpectedly are changing the way we behave.
I had somebody say also recently that they feel more self-conscious about being vulnerable in their preaching, because while it's online, it goes to anyone and everywhere and is, in a sense, there permanently. And they felt their preaching has changed somewhat. Have you got any reflections on that?
I think it's interesting, because the flip side is that I've also heard from people in our small groups that they're more prepared to be vulnerable in their small group than they would be in person. There's something about the distance that a screen provides that is allowing people to do that. But yes, no, I've experienced that. And, I'm aware that, our sermons would go up on the website as a recording, but frankly, not very many people would listen to them and download them. They were there because everybody's sermons go up on the website, but being on YouTube feels very different. And I'm acutely aware, as I'm sure all of us are, that anything I say could be taken and go around the world in social media. Was the last thing you want to do at the moment, is become popular, isn't it? I'm very happy to be fairly hidden. But yes, I'm aware of that. And coming down the tracks, if we look at some of the more hot topics at the moment in our culture, we're going to have to get our words very carefully right, because it's very public at the moment, very public.
So let's think a little bit more for a moment about this hybrid future, whatever people mean by that. How realistic do you think it is for churches as we hopefully come out of the pandemic season and move forward from this? How realistic do you think is it for churches to be doing stuff both online and physically gathered?
Some things I think are going to stay with us. I think we have a prayer gathering once a month in the evening. I think that's going to stay online now, because it's easier to get together that way, and for the people who can make it. I think, will stay with live streaming our services. So we began the year by putting ourselves out on YouTube, and we've stayed with that. The way we've done it has changed over the year, but the sitting at home, you just click on our YouTube site, and we're going to stay with that. And one of the things that surprised me was the people who were keenest on our live stream were the people who were shut in, were our older members. It shouldn't have surprised me, but I'd assumed from a blank piece of paper the people who would love the live stream would be younger. No. It's the ones who are saying, Chris, I can't come. I really can't come. I don't feel safe coming. Please don't stop the live stream. So we're going to continue. We're going to start meeting again on Easter Sunday, and we're going to continue to have cameras in the building, and we will push it out on live stream and be there. And one of the things we've done is always make sure there's somebody sitting on the chat on YouTube, so that we actually engage with the people watching live as well as the people in the building.
Now, are you planning to adjust your services in any way, given that they're going to be live streamed? So think back to pre-pandemic. I don't think you were live streaming pre-pandemic.
No, we weren't.
No. So are you going to adjust them in any way? Because the sort of I've heard a number of people say the sort of engagement that works online may not be the same as the engagement that works in building.
It's difficult. And that's why I'm cautious on the hybrid idea. So we are going to stay with live streaming our morning service. And that will simply be, we've got some cameras, we've got some people who run that. If you're at home, you're basically watching songs of praise live, but you've got a live chat column down the side, and you can contribute your prayer requests. So as we do at the moment, the person who's leading the service will pick up all the prayer requests at the end of the service from the chat and pray those through. We did begin having people live in the building. Anybody want to share anything? I had an open mic. That was careful because, of course, it goes out on YouTube. But somebody who's watching at home can't do that. So we've built our live stream on YouTube. We did think long and hard about whether to build our evening service on Zoom. And in that way that you have a talk and you say, well, let's go into little breakout rooms. If you're in the building, turn the chairs around. If you're at home, join your breakout room and do it that way. We looked long and hard about that and decided the investment of time to make it work well was actually not going to work. We'd actually far rather invest properly in, let's get back in the building and do that well and healthily. I don't think the software platform is there yet to do an engaging online church. Not I'm going to watch this on my screen, but actually make active participation at a distance and active participation in the building meaningful and connected and part of one thing. I don't think the software's there yet. And I think we're better off cutting with the grain of the simple stuff that we know works. But I think even big conferences with big budgets are struggling to find the platform. So I think it's easy to talk a big game about doing hybrid church and hybrid services. I think it's going to be very hard to deliver at the moment. Maybe down the track it will.
So am I right in assuming, therefore, that part of what's driving your decision-making about the future is that the engagement, you used a different word a moment ago, beginning with A, which I've already forgotten, but but the engagement, the ability to engage with what is going on, to interact with one another is core to what it means to be gathered as church. And therefore, that's why your preference would be, well, people will come back into the building, but you'll live stream because you know there are some who can't, and you want to continue giving them access to what's happening.
Yeah, I think so, which surprises me. But if you'd asked me on paper 2 years ago about live streaming, I'd have thought the most important thing was content, getting really good content out there. We're awash in really good content. If people want really good, engaging online sermons, there's not hard to find. What is scarce is community and connection. And so we want to connect with our members, whether they're physically in the building or at home. As people have joined us over the past year and we've watched them, we've asked for their postcodes as they've done it. And we've discouraged anybody who doesn't have a local postcode from being part of the St. James community. Anybody can watch. And one reason we will live stream is that there is an audience you discover, and the algorithm does weird things some Sundays about who is actually watching, and that is wonderful. You're being overheard the whole time, but we're not primarily a broadcasting organization. So we will continue to do the best content we can, but what we can do, which Songs of Praise can't, is connect and community. So we will work hard on those things.
Great. Last question, Chris. What are your hopes for the future of the church as you look forward from this point?
Oh, I hope we can sing.
Yes.
It's been one of the hardest costs of this, that we can't gather and praise God together. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to that. You know, Easter Sunday, we'll have the organ playing "Thine Be the Glory," and we'll be reading the words off a sheet. It's not good for us. God's made us to sing, and it is not good that we're being deprived of that. I think we will become smaller. I think some of the churches that are very big are going to struggle at this point, because what they've tried to lay on in terms of an excellent experience of worshiping in a big gathering, it's going to be a long time before that is, well, it'll be permitted, but whether people feel safe doing it. So smaller churches, which not a broadcast thing, but offering genuine friendship, genuine relationships, they will thrive and flourish. That is brilliant. I think we will all realize that we're not limited to a physical locale. We will be able to reach out, even just if we're grabbing our phones. We can all reach out and do stuff. But I'm longing for some community, some genuine fellowship and praise.
Three-dimensional in-body stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. That's how we've been created. We're not meant to relate to each other primarily through pixels. They're a great blessing, but they don't replace a hug, do they?
They don't. They absolutely don't. Chris, thanks so much for your time. That's so helpful. And I do thank you for your book. I found it probably the most stimulating thing I've read so far about this whole issue of what it means to be church online. Is it off limits? So I'm really grateful for the work that you've put into that, and do encourage others to get hold of it and have a good read. It's well worth it.